Hi everybody, and welcome to this Top Speed RC video. Today we're going to be reviewing the Yeti XL kit version. So, let's get to our categories we have today.
Alright, so our first category that we're doing today is Drivetrain. And how this is going to work, we're going to have 10 points. We have 11 categories. We're going to have 10 points for 9 of those categories and 5 points for 2 categories. We'll let you know what categories are 5 points once we get there. So this is going on a scale of 0 to 100, and 85 to 100 means buy it, 70 to 84 means good kit, 60 to 69 means need some upgrades, 50 to 59 means if you like to wrench, 40 to 49 means needs lots of help, and 0 to 49 is do not buy it. So anyways, like I was saying, our first category is Drivetrain. So Paul?
So, the Yeti XL has a pretty stout drivetrain in it. It's all metal except for your one plastic drive shaft down here. My first run out with it, there's the drive shaft that runs from the transmission to the front diff housing. I actually sheared the ball end off of that. I feel like that was a manufacturer defect, not a overall problem, because I've put a new one in there since, and Axial actually replaced the one that was in there for me for free, and I haven't had any issues with it and stuff, so I can't really knock it too hard for that. Otherwise, it has an all-metal drivetrain. Some of the bearings in the drivetrain, though, I can knock those. After one run, the bearings in the front end were falling apart, and the bearings in the rear end were not very good. So I ordered a set of fast eddies, and after quite a few runs through snow, mud, ice, dirt, whatever, they've been holding up great. So the stock bearings in this truck are not very good. If you're building a kit, you might as well just start off with a fast eddies bearing kit, because there's just no point. I would have liked to have seen some dust boots on the CV joints. Otherwise, right now, every so often you have to clean all the dirt and mud and crap out of them. That would have been nice to see some dust boots on there. But overall, the drivetrain on this thing is still pretty stout. What do you guys think?
I haven't driven it much, but I mean, it seems, other than the bearings, like he pointed out, I mean, seems pretty good. I couldn't hear you, but did you mention that this is plastic?
Yeah, I did mention the wild boar.
So other than that, I mean, it seems like a pretty good drivetrain to start out with. I mean, if we want to compare it to another monster truck, the Revo, that's got mostly plastic for the drivetrain. I mean, other than the diffs, obviously, but the axles are plastic, and the center drive shaft is. So I'd say the drivetrain itself is pretty good, other than the bearings, like he said.
And I know I'm repeating what they both said, but I own the RTR version of the Yeti, and the bearings were absolute garbage. Some of the small, thinner bearings, which go on the input shafts for both diffs, front and rear, those bearings were very thin, and they lasted maybe 5 to 10 runs if you were really lucky. But other than that, we've had next to no issues with the drivetrain. It's very solid and really reliable.
So anyways, let's score it now. So what would you give the score? It's your truck.
I'd probably give it an 8 on drivetrain. If it would have had a steel rear axle and better bearings and some CVs, it probably would have got a 10. But overall, I feel like it's a solid 8. It's pretty beefy drivetrain. I'm impressed.
All right, so our next category we're going to now is electronics.
Now, I can't really score it on electronics too much because I chose the ones that are in it. But it does have the Mama Monster X with the 2200 kV 1515 motor, and then the Savox 1270 TG servo. Then it's running a Fly Sky FS GT 3C remote. So those electronics are in it. I can't really say anything good or bad about them. Well, I really like them, but they didn't come with the truck, so they're not really part of the review. So I do like them, and we'll have other reviews on those electronics for you coming.
Okay, so the next category we're going to go to then is the suspension on the truck.
Now, the suspension out of the truck, out of the box, the front suspension was really, really soft. I have upgraded the front springs still, and even with them cranked all the way down, as you can see, it still can't bring itself all the way back up. And I've gone through and there's nothing binding in the front end, so that's not overly impressive there with the springs. But the shocks feel really good. They're really damp. Overall, it's got a good feel to it. It doesn't, with the sway bar on it that it comes up with, it gets some torque twist, but not near as much as it would without it. The overall, it rides pretty good, and the suspension feels pretty good. Since it's a kit, you have to tune it yourself, so I didn't use any of the stock oils it came with or anything like that because I decided to screw that and do my own stuff. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the suspension on it. What did you guys think?
The suspension seems to be pretty good with it.
One thing I forgot to mention is it does like to roll over sometimes, and I think that's just because of the rear end it has and the way it's set up. So it is kind of a top-heavy truck, and that doesn't help with this giant body on the top. But overall, it's pretty good suspension.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with both of them. The suspension is really quite good. The dual rate shocks seem to work very well in comparison with the RTR's linear non-dual rate shocks. But overall, it handles bumps great and rides good.
So
I'd probably give it an 8 again on suspension. I would like to see the front shocks a little stiffer, and I would like to see some hardened shafts on the shocks, even though it's been beat on pretty good. And these rear ones are never going to bend way on the trailing arms, but I haven't bent a front one either. So that'd been nice to see some titanium nitrate coated shafts, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. And some aluminum shock aluminum shock caps would have been nice too. So, but overall it's pretty good.
alright, so the next category we're moving on to is the tires of the truck.
These tires, I really like them. They hook up good. They seem to be wearing pretty well. They're nice and soft. They get good traction. My only gripe about the tires on here would be the foams they come with. They come with open cell foams, which don't do that great, and they seem to get, which sometimes it's nice and sometimes it's not. They get a lot of side bite, which will hook that and plant that rear end if it's in anything it can bite on and just flip the truck over. It'd be nice if they had a slightly less side bite to drift around a little more rather than just pure hook up. But that's just my personal driving style and whatever. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the tires and wheels that it comes with. So,
Alright, so what do you want to score up?
probably give it an 8 again. It would have been nice if it had closed cell foams. So,
Alright, so now the next category, which is a very important one, is durability.
alright. So, I haven't had too many issues with this truck out of the box. And the ones that I did have were kind of expected. So far, what I've broken is the front drive shaft, as I mentioned. I've snapped a front A-arm, and then I've blown out some of the bearings in it from the factory. But I stripped the stock plastic servo horn, but I can't really fault the plastic servo horn when you're putting 500 ounces of torque to it with these tires. So I can't really fault it on that one. So, but overall, it's been a pretty durable truck. The body's a little bit of an issue here. I don't like how that if you get a good servo, you can actually turn the tires in to hit the body, which then rips the front tabs off. But I can't be too hard on the body because it was running out in the ice and snow, and that's pretty hard on these kind of things too. So overall, durability has been pretty good. I mean, I broke stuff, but not like blowing stuff apart every run. I can run 5 or 6 packs through it, and it just keeps going.
So what do you think you should score
Do
then?
you guys have anything you want to say about the durability before we go into score?
Nope.
I'd probably give the durability an 8 again. So it had those few little issues, but it's been a pretty solid truck.
Alright, so our next category, which is one of the 5-point categories, is upgradability.
So this truck comes with some upgrades out of the box, like we've mentioned before. There's not a huge following for upgrades on these yet, but that's because they're a pretty new truck, I think. You can get like RPM, A-arms, and shock towers, Vanquish, you can get a rear axle, tires, and wheels. Well, not tires, but you can get wheels from Vanquish. MIP does make a rear drive shaft for it, I believe. Hot Racing has quite a bit of stuff for it. And then Pitbull Tires has tires and stuff for it. I mean, it's not a Slash or something like that where you can get every single part for it. But overall, if you want to build an XL, you can build an XL to be whatever you want it to be. You can get aluminum links and everything else for it, and overall, it's pretty upgradable, but not overly upgradable. Out of 5, I'd probably give it a 3. What do you guys think about that? Marv, you have an XL. You can talk about upgradability.
Yeah, the upgradability isn't great, and while RPM has probably been the most recent to release upgrades with the A-arms and the shock tower, there really isn't too much you can do to it yet. That'll probably change with time. Hot Racing, unlike most companies, seems to have released quite a bit for it. You can find a good chunk of the parts that you would want to upgrade by them. And overall, I think it'll get better as time goes on.
So yeah, I'll probably settle our 3 on that one.
Alright, so our next category, which is another 5-pointer, is parts access.
Now, unlike some of the other axial trucks that are pretty much on the shelf everywhere, like your Wraith and your SEX10, this one's not on the shelf too much parts for it. You're pretty much, any hobby shop can get the parts for it, but they're not on the shelf. So it's not like a cheap China truck where you're gotta like look for parts and wait for them and everything else. You gotta wait 2 days or whatever, and your hobby shop can get them type thing, but they're not on the shelf. So I'm probably gonna give it a 4 for that, because you can get them anywhere. It's just you usually have to wait a day or two. It's not Traxxas where every single thing is stocked at Pep Boys even and crap like that. So, but I feel like that'll get better with time too as more trucks come out. It's not going to be an obsolete truck like some of them. So, and lots of stores have Axial. They just don't stock parts for it as much as they would, but they can all get them. Anything to say on that one, Marv?
Yeah, just agreeing with what Paul said. It's not, you can get parts anywhere, but it's not like a Slash where you can just walk in and get anything you need for it. You're going to have to wait a few days for them to ship you the parts.
Alright, so next category, which again is a very important one, is the overall value of the truck.
No, I think with the kit, you're getting a pretty good value. You get to pick your own electronics. You get some upgrades out of the box, which are some pretty good needed upgrades, like the aluminum turnbuckles. I mean, we haven't broke a rear A-arm, but I feel like these are going to come in real handy. And then the 17mm hubs, which they seem like they should be standard, but they are a large upgrade. So I feel like the value of this truck is pretty good. You get a lot of truck for it too. You can bash it, you can run it like that, you can set up like an Ultra 4 car, you can crawl with it. This truck, I mean, heck, I ran it around a 2-wheel or a 10 scale indoor track once for off-road track with little buggies and crap. So it can, I'm not recommending doing that, but it can do almost everything. It's a very, very versatile truck. You can lock the rear end and set it up to go crawling. You can leave it real open and set it up to go racing around a field. So I think the value of this truck is pretty good. I'll leave what these guys think before I throw a score out. But
Again, I haven't drove it, so I can't say much to it, but I mean, it seems okay, so.
Yeah, I'd say overall it's a great truck. You do get a significant amount of upgrades over the RTR if you go with the kit. But yeah, it's dependable, it works great, it runs hard, and
yeah, I'm probably gonna give it an 8 for value. It's expensive, but you get a ton of truck for what you're buying here. I mean, just look at the size of this thing. You're getting a ton of truck. So overall, yeah, it does. I think it's got a good value to what you're getting here.
All right, so our next category is working ease.
All right, that's where this truck, it kind of falls down. This truck's kind of a pain to work on. For one, as you've seen before, hey, I'm trying to change out my batteries here. oh, my finger just got snapped off. So that's a huge pain, and it's not a big deal to take the body off, but you got to take this rear tire off, and you got to take 4 screws out, which will 90% of the time strip the plastic because they're a cutting screw. They're not a machine screw, which, well, from the factory they are. I changed them out to machine screws, but we'll get to that in a Tech Tip Tuesday one for those. To get your front diff here, you have to pull the whole front suspension off, the front bumper, pop the cap off, and then the front diff finally falls out. It's not like some trucks where you pop the front bumper off the 4 screws and it comes out. Because the front diff is all screwed, the cover's all screwed in from the bottom too. And these front hinge pins that hold these front A-arms in are the biggest pain in the rear on the planet. Because they don't give you enough room to get a wrench into the nuts on the back of them. You gotta like hold them with a pliers on an angle. It's awful. The transmission's pretty easy to work on. I mean, I haven't had to work on it, but putting it together is pretty easy. This whole front section here was the biggest pain in the rear to put together too, and nothing lined up, and it took 2 people to like pinch it together and get it screwed into place. That was a big pain in the rear. The rear diff, it isn't too hard to get to. You got to yank the tires out, obviously. Then you have to take the 3 bolts that hold the whole rear end out together. I pull those out because 3 bolts and it's easier. Then you got to take the lockouts out. Then you got to take the axles out, take the gear cover off, and then you can roll the main differential itself out. So it's not the easiest truck to work on the planet. It's no 8th scale buggy or slash or anything like that. If you're going to work on it, you're going to be there for a little bit. It's not the easiest thing to work on the planet. I mean, it's not an EXO where you have to like take the 50,000 screws out of the body to get the body off to get into anything, but it's not the easiest truck ever. Marv, you want to testify to that?
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of wrenching on mine, and yes, it's not the easiest truck to work on, but it's not the worst either. So overall, if you got the time, it's not too big of a deal.
I'm probably going to give it a 6 for working. I mean, it's not impossible, and anyone could figure it out, and especially if you buy the kit, you get the whole exploded views or everything, and even with the RTR, you get exploded views. So you know where everything goes and stuff, so it's not like you get it apart and I can't figure out how to put this thing back together. It's not hard like that, it just takes time. Everything's obvious, it just takes time. So, yeah.
Alright, so our second to last category is fun.
This truck, it's a butt ton of fun. It's a blast to drive. It takes some used to getting to learn how to drive it. It's not like anything else where this rear axle, it just acts differently than any other truck. It doesn't jump that great. It likes to go like this in the air. But it's just a fun truck to drive. It gets looks everywhere. You can run it through a park and you've got 30 little kids chasing it around and their parents all wanting to know how much you paid for it so they can go get one for their kid. And then they leave after you tell them how much you paid for it. But the one you're behind your house.
Continue.
So it's a pretty fun truck to drive. So Marv, you can attest to the funness.
Yeah, it's a real blast to drive. It does great over some pretty rough terrain. It's not the greatest on pavement, but that's not really what it was meant for. It's also not the greatest on loose, flat surfaces because of its higher center of gravity. The sway bar does make it a lot better for that, but it's still not the greatest. But if you're going over tall grass or in the woods or something like that, it's great through grass and pretty rough stuff. So
I'm gonna give it an 8 for fun factor. Yeah, it's a lot of fun though, because you can go from running on a baseball diamond to crawling. Even this is with the sway bar on here. You're still flexing it out there pretty good there. So I mean, it's just a fun truck to drive. So
Alright, so our final category is the out-of-box quality.
So now this category needs a little bit of explaining, kind of. It's like, is everything there when you pull it out of the box? Is everything tightened down? Nothing's broken? All that kind of stuff. So Obviously, since it was a kit, you're not going to be going everything's tightened down because I hope it's not. But I didn't really have any issues out of the box other than the broken cross shaft for the differential. So it's not going to get perfect on that one, obviously. But other than that, it was no problem. So I'll give it a 9 out of 10 for that. Because it's a $4 part, big deal. It held up my build for a day and a half. So we're not going to be quite out of 100 here because it doesn't have electronics, but well, our resident accountant adds it up here. So, but this truck's it's a fun truck to drive. So,
All right, so after adding up the scores, got 70 out of 90. So if we adjust our scale properly, probably be in the, that'd be in the good kit range. So say that's probably a pretty fair category for it. I wouldn't necessarily say it's in the best category, but I wouldn't say it needs to be any lower either, based on what I've seen from it. Again, I haven't drove it, but so 70 out of 90 is the final score we get on this truck.
yeah, I feel like that's where it should land too. It's not perfect. But it's not terrible. It's a really good truck to have. It's a fun truck to drive. So it's a great truck to have in your collection. So this has been Top Speed RC's review on the Axial Yeti XL kit version. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and yeah.